All right, maintain mount, pulling elbows and hands off of knees. So this is one of the most important, just basic ways to maintain mount. I never want this person to put their hands on me. If they can make a connection and make a frame onto my body, it's gonna give me issues. So whether that be a hand on the knee, an elbow on the knee, or a hand on the hip, all of these things are bad. So we're gonna address specifically when he starts pressing on the knees here. So I should be in my good mount position here. We'll just turn slightly here so you can see. I have frog feet here, my heels are hidden, my knees are relaxed, I'm relaxed in the hips, and my knees are flared. But my heels are glued to his butt. My hands are wide enough that he can't easily collapse them. So if he reaches and tries to pull my arms in, I should be able to resist this fairly well. If they're in too close, he'll be able to collapse those and pull my hands off the mat. I want my hips pressing forward so that my belly button is pressing into my opponent. I don't want to have a turtle back here so that my belly button is off. It needs to be pressing in, okay? My hands should be wide enough that he can't collapse, but not so wide that my chest is on my opponent. If my chest is on, if he oopas and rolls, I tend to roll with him easier. So if he rolls side to side a couple times, you'll be able to see how much my body moves here because my chest is connected. So I need to have an arch in my back. This will press my weight more efficiently into him, and it will take my chest off. So now if he oopas and rolls, you can see how I can float and my hips don't twist, okay? So if he ever starts pressing my knees, we'll say with the hand here, the important thing is that I don't let my foot come away from his butt. So if he presses here, I'm not gonna let my foot go out because he'll be able to sneak under right there. And so if he presses, I'm just relaxed in the hip. I don't care what he does with my knee as long as I can keep my foot glued. So if he presses on that knee, you can see it can just come off the mat, it can go deep. I'm just gonna let that foot sneak deeper under his legs, next to his butt here. So don't ever be so rigid in your leg here that when he pushes the knee, the foot goes with it. That's how he's going to escape. If he presses on that leg, on that knee, and extends his arm, it's a lot easier to remove it. So if he's pressing here and I'm resisting with this knee, I'm creating a solid connection between the knee and the hand. And so by letting that flare out, it is easier to pull this off, okay? Just like on our chest push, if I open that up, I take some pressure off and it's easier to swim the hands through. So it's the same concept here on the knees. If he presses and I just let it slip, there's not as much pressure there, and now I can scoop with my 5 fingers just right on the wrist, pull it up high, and replace nice and deep. He goes the other side, pull, place, nice and deep. And so don't resist that, let it slip through, and you'll feel it's a lot easier to pull this off. So there's usually a gap here that I can fit my 5 fingers under, but if there's not, just lifting my knee up a little bit, if he's not lifting it for me, I'll just lift it up a little bit. If I just try and keep that knee on the mat and try and dig in there, it's a little difficult. So just let that weight drive forward onto your hips, and you can just lift your knees up by pressing the feet up right here. Okay, they're still staying close to the butt, but I'm allowing my knees to come up, and when he's connected here, it will allow me to get my fingers under. And I'm exaggerating that a bit, but if he goes finger to the mat, pinky to the mat, it can get really tight there. So just by letting that slip a little bit, you can see how I can feed my fingers in a little bit better, okay? So it's usually not super difficult to get onto the wrist. It's usually the elbow that we have issues with. So if I'm in a little bit higher mount here and he can't easily get the hand to the knee, he'll go elbows to the knee. And especially on a big guy like this, he's got a lot of tricep and there's just no gap to get under there, okay? So same thing, if I just let that slip a little bit, you can see how in order to follow, his elbow's gonna come up a little bit. And against a guy that has a really big tricep, you'll find that the opening is on the elbow point because his tricep is really bulging, okay? And so that makes the point of the elbow stick up a little higher, okay? Some people that are a little smaller, they can really dig that elbow point in there, and sometimes it's actually easier to come up on the tricep, but generally we want to get as far onto that lever as possible. So as he presses, I'm just going to relax that, and then it creates just a little bit of a gap. Hopefully you can see that. If he presses here, it's pretty tight, but by letting that slip, it opens up that space. So he presses, I let that knee slip, now there's a space. So when I grab the elbow, I'm pulling up. If I can catch his forearm and pinch it here, it gives me some pretty good retention to be able to slide that up. And I can switch to the other side, slide that up. So a couple little tricks there to hopefully help you get that off the mat. If he presses here, oh, there's lots of space. But when they really dig down deep, that's when we need to just kind of let that slip. And usually that opens up something. I got it right there on this one. And always make sure to replace, okay? It's a really common mistake to do this, but not replace. And so he presses and I peel, and then I just kind of sit here, and he just puts his hands right back, and then I end up playing this game, and eventually he's gonna get out. So however he presses with the elbow or the knee, make sure you're always sliding up, okay? And we might not always be able to do this in one fluid movement. It's not always this pretty where we're sneaking up in one motion because we've got to fight two hands, okay? I've isolated this hand, but he's still fighting me on this side, so I can't climb up as high as I'd like to. So I just take whatever ground I can get. Switch to this one, climb up, he goes to elbows, boom, boom. So you'll see that it's kind of a, we take some ground, we give it up to take the hand off, and then we take some more. So what I mean by that is, we'll say he's nice and tight on the wrist. I'm gonna give up some ground. I'm gonna let the knee slip, okay, so that the hand comes off easier. I'm gonna slide up as high as I can get, okay, and then I'm gonna go for this arm. When I go for this arm, he's gonna dig that elbow in, okay? So he digs this elbow in here, and now I've got to fight that. So I've got to give up some ground here to pull that off, and then I can take some more. So sometimes it just takes 3, 4, 5, 6 times to really get into a nice high mount to where he can't even put elbows on. But by sliding up as high as we can, it takes away his ability to put his hands on our knees and hips. So some people don't feel super comfortable in this high mount, but eventually you should be, and you'll learn more stuff to attack and maintain mount from here. So don't avoid doing this move because your high mount is not the best. It still takes away his ability to press you low. And so at the very least, even if we don't maintain mount here initially, if we're a beginner, it will really force this guy to make some mistakes while he's trying to escape. And hopefully you can capitalize on some of those.